Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Steve Breach coming to you here with a memory video from 1998. I honestly wish that they would bring back WWE rivalries on the WWE Network to sort of bring up some of these rivalries that were from the past. This one would be an excellent episode if it wasn't already panned out with the 20-episode series of the Monday Night War, as well as the past DVD that came out around 2002. At Slamboree 1998, there was a scheduled match pitting two of the biggest people there was in the wrestling business at the time. Neither of them were wrestlers. Vince McMahon against Eric Bischoff. This match came out of the middle of nowhere and took the wrestling world by storm. Basically, on Monday Nitro, only days before the Slamboree 1998 pay-per-view, Eric Bischoff came down to the ring to deliver a promo, basically to state that he was the king of wrestling. And in this promo, he delivered a challenge to Vince McMahon that they could have a fight at Slamboree 1998, a pay-per-view that would hosted in Worcester, Massachusetts. And Eric Bischoff wanted a showdown with Vince. I think that honestly, Eric Bischoff didn't know what was going to happen. Eric Bischoff, of course, having a past history in karate, honestly thought that he could hold his own against the aging Vince at that time. But at this time, I don't think Vince had, released the guns. Vince McMahon had always, had a storied past that came out during the steroid trial that Vince himself was on steroids, but, most people know that Vince, had worked out, but I don't think really the world had been revealed until the next year's Royal Rumble, when Vince came out to do the whole 2 minutes with Stone Cold Steve Austin, with Austin was number 1 and Vince was number 2. That was the first time we really got to see the guns. Basically, Bischoff, I think, was desperate. At that time, I think WCW had sort of been exposed with the whole NWO storyline. A lot of people thought at Starrcade, when they did Sting versus Hogan, that should have had some sort of stipulation that if Sting won the match, the NWO would have to sort of dissolve or disband. But instead, Sting won the match. And then they had the whole deal with Monday Nitro and Thunder debuting that week, that they decided that they would, hold the title up. And I think that, sort of swayed a lot of fans that had gone in for the long haul of the NWO versus Sting, that maybe WCW was sort of baiting and hooking them a little bit. They would bring back Sting versus Hogan the next month on pay-per-view, where they would have Sting actually win the championship. And then, of course, from there, they would start the NWO split of doing Hogan versus Macho Man. And, of course, Sting would be involved in that whole deal with Macho Man and Sting sort of forming the Wolf Pack and then bringing Kevin Nash into the fold and things like that. But, at the same time, if you flip the networks and you were watching Monday Night Raw, at that time we're just months past WrestleMania 14. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels, Mike Tyson bringing that fresh new attitude. Of course, at WrestleMania, it was Shawn Michaels' last match before leaving WWF for a number of years. This should have left a big hole for WWF at the time. They were coming out of those pay-per-views using Mick Foley, who was not a real main eventer, I don't believe, but because of the whole Stone Cold versus Vince storyline, it kept them fresh. At that time, they really only had The Undertaker as a real main eventer. Of course, they would have guys like Ken Shamrock, they would have The Rock, that they were building up to become, main event guys. But that whole fresh attitude was making people flip over to Monday Night Raw and see what they had to offer. It was almost like WCW had sort of ran the well dry, and although they would go on for a few more years before closing up, Tony Schiavone said it best, is that somewhere between the whole start of the Sting angle and the actual Sting match, at Starrcade, they fucked up. They didn't do something right. Nobody can really point their finger at it, but this honestly was Eric Bischoff trying to gain some publicity. It was Eric Bischoff trying to gain a few buys. I think it would take until Friday for Vince McMahon to release a statement basically saying that he was not going to be at the event. It was posted online. Most dirt sheet sites ran it as well, as it was posted on WWE.com. But at that point in 1998, I think there's a good deal of people who actually bought the pay-per-view thinking that they were going to see Vince versus Eric Bischoff. And I think that even though I was a fan that was on the internet, I didn't think there was a chance that this was going to happen, because at that time I was sort of becoming a smarter wrestling fan. But I just didn't think there was any way in the world, even if Vince wanted a piece of Eric Bischoff, that he would actually show up on the competition. It almost goes back to when they were doing the whole Monday Night War thing, where DX showed up at WCW Monday Nitro and were making their way down the ramp, and WCW security closed the ramp, closed the gate on the ramp on DX, not letting them enter into the building, but thinking if they would have came into the arena, and Monday Nitro would have, put a camera on them backstage to show, were these guys really as tough as they thought they were going to be once they got in the back and were surrounded by WCW's wrestlers? Did they just cowered in fear? Obviously, you couldn't just jump these guys and beat them up. It's not the Wild West of wrestling like it was in the 70s and 80s during the territory days, with, Harley Race showing up with a gun and threatening to burn down a WWF ring that was in Kansas City because they were moving in on his territory. It wasn't anything like that, but basically Kevin Nash said it best in my mind. What show are you going to watch? The show that's got everybody on it, or the show that's only got the WWF guys on it? I'm going to be seeing WCW because I want to see what the heck actually is going to happen. So I think most people turned into watching Slamboree 1998. I remember that I watched this show, but I'll tell you the truth, I haven't seen this event since 1998. It was main evented by Sting and the Giant going up against the Outsiders for the WCW title. They had a mid-card match of Randy Savage going up against Bret Hart. Goldberg had a match against Saturn. So you can tell by looking at this that, it really wasn't going to be doing gangbusters on its own. WCW basically was going to sell this as a WCW pay-per-view, and that's what was going to make people tune in. At the actual event, they just basically had Bischoff come down to the ring. They announced Vince McMahon, who did not come out. The referee said that, basically Vince had a 10 count to get down to the ring. They counted him out, and Eric took the victory. In the long run, what was that victory really worth? Maybe it got them a few buys on pay-per-view, but then, again, one of the things that ran WCW out of business in my mind was the bait and switch that went down. So many main event matches on Nitro ending with NWO run-ins or just blatant disqualifications, count-out victories, not having clean victories, pay-per-views where you would throw down your $30 for them basically to say, tune in on Nitro and we'll let you know what happened. It happened too many times. And I think that honestly not having a match that you build as Eric Bischoff versus Vince, which blatantly was going to be one of the main events of that show, that you would, drive home on Nitro. You have to see this, not happening. Is one of those reasons why I think WCW is not around today. So it was a big time in history, but as a lot of things in WCW, nothing really happened.